Our guest today is Claudia Viek. She's the CEO of CAMEO. It's a statewide network of organizations that help entrepreneurs and small businesses grow and start their own businesses. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Reese.
So what is it exactly that CAMEO does?
Well, as you mentioned, we're a statewide network. We represent 87 organizations that work with roughly 21,000 businesses last year. And these organizations provide training, business support and assistance, and small loans to people who are starting and growing small businesses.
Okay, so you help the organizations that help the entrepreneurs.
Yes, exactly. We advocate for their needs in Washington and Sacramento. We help raise funds from banks and other sources to support this work because it's a lot of hands-on assistance. And we also provide access to crowdfunding and other technologies that are going to scale up microlending, largely because banks have pulled back from making small business loans, and our members that are called community development financial institutions, they have stepped up to the plate to provide loans to very small and growing businesses.
So let me say that we found you actually because we were doing news for very small businesses, and it seemed like every week or every other week you guys were in the news. CAMEO was, you know.
That's good to hear.
You were in Washington testifying. Yes. Before.
Yeah, we had a congressional briefing.
Okay. So one of the things is the CAMEO stands for the
California Association for Micro Enterprise Opportunity.
Okay, and it's that micro enterprise thing, and I want to just talk about this a little because for me, micro enterprise, we would have named our things a micro enterprise file or micro business file,
right?
Because that's who we're really focused on is the 0 to 10. But unfortunately, people aren't using that term, and it's unfortunate because when the government thinks about big business, what do they, tell us the difference between what microenterprise is and
I think microenterprise is a term that has been associated with developing countries and with very, very small marginal businesses when in fact, or enterprises, when in fact it covers the gamut of zero, like non-employer firms, self-employment, to up to 5 employees. That's the definition of a micro business. So in micro enterprise was seen as somebody who maybe will never graduate from a flea market status or a street vendor, when in fact we encompass that the whole spectrum of someone who starts in their home as a cottage business, baking cupcakes, to somebody who may be working out of their home in a virtual corporation with $1 million in sales.
Right. So that's one of the things that I have a problem with. I wish people would use that term more because when you lump us, in the very small businesses in with small business,
right?
The government thinks of that as up to 100 employees in some cases, or 500 employees in some cases, up to 1,500 employees. I guess they added mining in there. It's like you can still be a small business.
But what's really amazing, Reese, and we just got the data pulled together from SBA and Census Data and others, and we have it on our website at CAMEO, is that when we look at the job creation statistics from the last 7 years, from 2003 through 2010, the 1 to 4 employees, this is not even counting the self-employed, created in California over 700,000 net new jobs, while the businesses 500 employees and over lost almost 300,000 net, shedding jobs. So this was a big wake-up call for us because even if half of those little businesses went out of business, we would still be up 300,000
right.
And yet the propaganda that's put out there by our state and the state chambers is that it's these large businesses that are creating all the jobs. But in fact, corporations aren't in business to create employment. But because of the trends that we're seeing now towards self-employment and because we have more of a contingent workforce, and I'm not saying this is a positive or a negative trend, it's a fact. How do we take that entrepreneurial potential in our community and get the support they need to be successful and sustain?
Right. Well, I think originally the idea was that the government had sort of set aside contracts, right, for small businesses. But truthfully, small businesses aren't getting a lot of, real small businesses aren't getting a lot of that. You still have to be pretty big to.
Well, there certainly are a number of us that are advocating for that. Women Impacting Public Policy, WIP, was very effective in getting a 5% set aside for women business owners, and they're, in small amounts, small contract amounts. The state of California has been actually pretty good in separating out some contracts for the micro business sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And let's talk also about we were talking about the jobs. They come out with these job reports that say X amount of people have stopped, they've given up
Right.
looking for work. And my mind thinks, well, maybe they've actually started small businesses. What does your data show on that?
Yeah, whenever you hear, oh, the unemployment rate is lowered, but then it's been mitigated by the fact that a whole bunch of people, mostly over 50 years old, have stopped looking for work, their job has gone away. And that's one of the biggest cohorts in the self-employment trend, are folks over 50.
We just covered the State of Independence report by MBO Partners, and you're aware of that, or you work with them? Or?
Oh yes, very closely with Emergent Research that does the research for MBO Partners. And we were astounded by the increase over last year in people self-employed. There's now 18 million self-employed people. And these are people who are supporting themselves, working more than 15 hours a week at their business. In California, this is particularly true too.
Right, people who just decide they're a consultant, or what kinds of businesses are these folks starting?
Well, self-employed covers quite a large gamut. Some people call themselves freelancers, others call themselves consultants. Some people see themselves as self-employed with a portfolio, and other people see themselves as business owners, particularly women, by the way,
Interesting.
see themselves as business owners. It can be anything from a cottage kitchen activity, and our state passed legislation last year that allows people to do certain kinds of food preparation out of their own kitchens. So, for example, in Santa Cruz, they have a very enlightened approach, the city, and they're actually supporting the cottage kitchen providers or business owners and giving them business support and access to loans too, so they can grow and maybe move out of their kitchen someday. But that's just one example. You also have people who've been, let's say, laid off from the redevelopment agencies or from other corporations, and they're taking their skills and making them more portable and contracting back to the organization, and other companies too. And that's really why business assistance is so critical and so important. It provides a supportive atmosphere for somebody who's in transition, and it can be a little difficult for folks. It also provides people with up-to-the-date business information, how to use technology and social media to promote what you do and provide and get out into the marketplace in new ways. It also gives you access to other people who are advisors to you and can give you perspective and also supplement your skill set. Like, you may not know anything about the financing of your business and how to develop your books and things like that. So a small business development center or women's business center or numerous the nonprofit groups and CAMEO's membership will help you develop yourself as a business owner and help you make good decisions about how to grow.
For less than the cost of bringing in a bookkeeper? Or?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much learn QuickBooks on your own. Once you get to a point where you have, let's say, an employee, or you become more complex in terms of your revenue streams, you may want to hire a bookkeeper. But many people are doing that on their own, or their family-owned business, and someone in the family is doing the bookkeeping part of it. But yes, it's just learning how to set up your business or your self-employment in a business-like way. The SBA reports, and everyone hears those terrible factors, that 50 to 80% of businesses fail in the first 3 to 5 years. But we have found through our research of our members over 15, 20 years is that 80% of these entrepreneurs succeed when they get help. They make it through those first 3 to 5 years. So that's like turning that whole
And I would be part of that because early on in my business I went to the SBDC took a business planning class. I had already started my business, but I went back, did the business plan.
Great.
And here I am many years later. So
Great. And why did you take that class? What motivated you?
why did I take that class? I took the class because I wanted to have a better chance at succeeding and felt like I needed to plan better, and there were parts of having a business plan that I didn't know how to put together quite.
Good. Well, I hate platitudes, but it's so true. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And people need to be thinking about that.
Now, the plan that I made has very little to do with where I am now, but it did help me think about my options, and just it's the process of going through that that I think is the valuable, not so much the document that comes out of it.
Yes, exactly.
And I think people don't get that as much as
they shouldn't feel that, oh gosh, I shouldn't approach the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center or the local Small Business Development Center because I don't want to have to build this huge business plan, 200 pages. No, we're talking about a real practical kind of roadmap. And people have 5-page business plans, they have 20-page, they have just a couple of executive summary, whatever works.
Right. I think the main thing is people don't understand the questions that they need to ask themselves. And it's one of those things, if they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that these kinds of courses help. So what are some of the services that small businesses should take advantage of that you help your organizations provide? What do you look at and say, gee, why isn't everybody doing this?
I think there are 2 key areas that small businesses are weak in. And one is in the marketing arena, because particularly with social media, there's just so much stuff out there. How do you navigate that, especially on a very small or non-existent budget?
Right. Everybody wants to sell you something.
And so getting that information and being able to digest it and use it and see what other people are doing. You can't really get that online. You can certainly do a marketing analysis through some online questions and questionnaires, but really finding people who've been through that before, or having a forum in which to discuss that and get good feedback is essential. And that's what the business assistance programs, the CAMEO members provide. The second and most important is financial management. So everybody needs to be able to think about the cash flow projection for their business if they're going to be successful, and what the one of the major concerns people have, of course, is the cash flow into their business. This is one of the reasons people are fearful about starting. So it's not so much being a risk taker. It's something that helps you avoid risk by spending the time on doing the cash flow projection and understanding the financial statements. I know a lot of people are math averse, and I know as women business owners particularly have had issues with dealing with that because of very few women get into math and science. But I'll tell you personally, when I learned to do cash flow projection, and it was a nonprofit organization, it's the same thing, I felt so empowered, because then you can really evaluate what you're doing, where your revenue streams are, what's producing, what isn't producing.
Right, right. And also I guess gives you the advance warning when to take evasive action if needed.
Yeah. Well, you often, you're attached to parts of your business. It's a passion. They always say go with your passion. But you have to have something that's going to balance the passion. And that's what I would call understanding cash flow.
Okay. So on the marketing thing, I'm surprised to hear you say that some of the organizations help with things like social media and stuff. So it's that current.
They're training people in all forms of marketing, and social media is part of that.
Okay, and maybe it's a misperception. I think of these organizations as like the SBA or something, and they have these dusty 10-year-old pamphlets that talk about yellow page advertising.
No, not anymore.
So the stuff is pretty current that's offered.
Yes, it's current, and generally, although not always, the teachers, the trainers, are people with hands-on experience, and I think that's something that people should look for. Who's teaching this class? Is it somebody who really knows about small business and what business owners go through, or is it somebody who's got a theoretical information?
And where would a business owner start to find the resources to help them?
CAMEO's website is one good source because we have information on resources and organizations throughout the state. There's about 100 organizations if you include the roughly, I think, 38 small business development centers, 11 women's business centers, and then a number up to, I'd say, 80. So about 100 and so there are another 50 nonprofits that provide assistance as well. Also for loans too, for small loans under $50,000 or $5,000 to $10,000 loans particularly. Our website has an asterisk or has a section on the community development lenders in their communities.
And are these different from the SBA loans of years ago, where you had to have the 500-page business plan and you had to have a
it depends
relatively
on the
large
size
business plan?
It depends on the size of the loan too. For small $5,000 and $10,000 loans, don't need a huge business plan, but you do have to demonstrate that you understand how you're going to pay the loan back.
Right.
And most of the loans are not collateral based. They're more cash flow based.
Okay.
So you have to show and prove that you can pay it back by the projections and your current income. Yeah, so it's pretty practical in that respect. But SBA loans are managed by our members as well. The micro loan program, the community advantage program. Many of our members,
I don't think were around when I was looking.
No, many of our members can make loans up to $200,000 now.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
No, I seem to remember you had to go. You could go to a bank. It was the banks were guaranteed the loan by the SBA, but you had to. They even told you. Even the banks said, "Oh, unless you're really committed to this, don't even bother because it's a huge, long process."
Well, in the Bay Area, we have a number of excellent community development financial institutions. They're also called CDFIs, or community-based lenders, and they include Opportunity Fund, Oakland Business Development Center, OBDC, Small Business Finance, Working Solutions. They're all serving the Bay Area in different parts, from Marin down to Santa Clara. OBDC is more on this side, and in San Francisco as well.
So do most of the organizations just serve a small geographic or a certain defined geographic area?
Yes, and most of them were set up to work with low, moderate income communities, people who didn't have access to financing, where banks had pulled out of their retail spaces, so they were coming in to fill that gap. Also, the key to small business lending, if I can leave anybody with these thoughts, is the business technical assistance that's provided. So you come in, you're looking for a loan, but you get help in pulling your financials together and understanding really how much financing you really need. It may be that you don't want to increase your debt, and you need to keep working and keep that second income coming in while you develop your business. And those are the things, they're management decisions really, those judgment calls. You get support in making those from what we call business or financial technical assistance, and those are provided by the nonprofit groups.
Okay, terrific. So that's one of those things that helps people from being the statistic that 50% of businesses fail to the statistic that 80% of businesses, or only 30% of businesses fail. So you improve your chances by that much. Is that one of the...
Well, as I said, if you get assistance, we have found that 80% of those who start, and a lot of people make a good decision not to start, but they don't show up on the screen, but of those who start, 80% make it through the first 3 to 5 years. And this is supported by the Aspen Institute's also many years of surveying too. CAMEO does its own internal surveys. And I've done surveys when I ran the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center. We always did a survey of outcomes. And we're amazed by the difference of somebody taking this 14-week class.
Wow.
Now, not every organization, you don't have to take a 14-week class. They have workshops, they have one-to-one assistance. Every business has its own kind of needs. And there's more and more online learning too. And I think that's one of the trends that we're looking at. How is that going to work with the existing infrastructure that we have?
Right, especially important for small business owners. It's often, our schedules are not necessarily our own.
And also, we're so, the commutes and the, as we were talking about earlier, the commutes and the congestion are so difficult. It's hard for people to get out to take a class 2 nights a week. So how do you supplement that? The secret sauce of our members is that supportive technical assistance, business technical assistance.
And so people would start on the CAMEO website and look for things in their area. Is it broken
that's
down
one way to start. The SBA also has a good website too, and they also have online training opportunities too through the SBA. And the small business development centers are also listed on the SBA website. So between those two, you'll be able to find something in your community.
So you were talking to me earlier, and you were saying that you are really supporting the do-it-yourself economy. Explain what that is.
Yes, CAMEO's members are really supporting what we like to call the do-it-yourself or homegrown economies. These are people who are choosing to run their own business, to become self-employed, to work out of their homes, often to get started. These are small, locally owned, locally grown businesses that are adding to the economy. They hire locally, they're sourcing their product, they're sourcing what they need, their materials to grow. We feel that this is where the jobs are being created. And this is where economic development funds should be focused and workforce funds should be focused to support people to be successful and sustainable in growing their business. Whether it's a business that as a cottage kitchen business, if it's a business that's running a food truck, for example, it could be a
television show in someone's
self-employed,
garage.
yes, I was going to say, a self-employed videographer. It could be a person who is a virtual corporation that constructs canoes. I remember reading about a kayak maker who worked out of his home and everything was sourced out. And he coordinated with over $1 million business. And that's what we like to call the do-it-yourself economy. So instead of spending scarce public dollars on attracting chain stores and giving tax breaks to large corporations that may or may not stay in your community, let's invest in local entrepreneurs and locally owned businesses. And we have seen now, without a shadow of a doubt, that the job creation is amazing and it's sustainable. So that's one of the areas that CAMEO is very concerned about, and what our members are supporting that.
Yeah, one of the trends that you see is a big company will come in and they'll have one manager who makes a decent living, and then they'll have assistant managers who make really not very good money, and then everybody else makes really poor money, instead of having small business owners or who actually make and have money to contribute back into the economy.
Yes,
and all the money goes out of the community.
The wages that we've through our annual surveys, we've found that the average wage paid by a small business that benefits from our members has been $16 an hour. This is after 2 years.
And that's probably a lot more than a big store will pay.
Right. And it's very possible, too, that with the advent of Obamacare and a more portable health care, that we're going to see more people starting businesses because they'll be able to have health care, purchase health care.
And that's what I've been saying. It's kind of funny. That's we're on the same wavelength, because I've been saying to people, when Obamacare really comes in, when people can actually get their health insurance, I think we're going to see a huge shift of people that have been wanting to start their own business, but they need to have that insurance. I mean, if you have high blood pressure, you don't get insurance for or you didn't.
Right.
Now, people can go, well, I can quit this job as long as I can afford my health insurance, and they'll be able to do that.
And you're making me think too about a very important part of our population, which are our returning veterans, both men and women, and there are large numbers coming into California in particular. Self-employment is a really viable option for folks who've been through a lot and are healing from that, because you have more flexibility. You have I guess you could say more work-life balance when you are able to start a small business out of your home. And also we've seen that data shows that vets are really have the discipline and are very interested in self-employment. And yet there really is very little funding coming from the federal government or any of our corporations to support entrepreneurship for veterans. CAMEO is directly involved now, and we've hired a vet and going around to find the vets in the communities and linking them with the small business assistance programs that I talked about in our membership.
I mean, yeah, there seems to be a lot of money and focus in helping vets find jobs.
Right.
But that's not helping them start their
And
own
social
business.
services, which is good. I mean, we need to do that too.
Right.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing that, but we should also be looking at this entrepreneurial potential in our communities.
As another option
Yes.
for people. I imagine it's an option for people who are getting out of prison as well.
Yes, this is an emerging area. We're watching it carefully. A few of our members are beginning to provide services to people who are getting out of prison. We're seeing in California, through the realignment efforts, more of a focus on community-based services to people getting out of prison. And self-employment is often a very good option for somebody who can't qualify for or will have difficulty getting a job, and some of the licenses that are required. So self-employment is really a good option. And the supportive atmosphere, too, that's created by the organizations that are part of our membership are really key.
Yeah, it seems like it's a problem. You know, people get out, they can't get a job.
Right.
And, you know, it only perpetuates the cycle of crime and poverty. And if
Right.
they can, if they want to stay out of prison and they want to improve themselves by, you know, being able to start a small business as inexpensively as you can today.
Right. I would love to see some positive results and more of investment in entrepreneurship for the prisoner reentry.
Yeah, I think it would give people a way to move
Yeah.
back, you know, get back into society, really.
So we're putting that on our list.
Okay.
We're very focused at CAMEO on getting the workforce system to embrace self-employment because it's a labor market trend. Unfortunately, although Department of Labor has stated and encouraged states and localities to support and fund self-employment training at the centers I've mentioned that are CAMEO members, the state and local workforce investment boards have been very, very reluctant to change and support this 21st century economy. So that's one of our missions, is to help them see their way to supporting self-employment as a labor market and workforce trend.
Okay. Now, let's, you know, and this brings us to this whole, the political, there's a political aspect to all this.
Yes.
What can people do to support this whole embracing of small business as an alternative to labor, so that when we think of jobs, we also think of small business?
Everybody talks about the importance of small business and how it's the engine of economic recovery. How many times have we heard that? But when it comes to allocating our precious tax dollars, almost no funding goes to support the success that I've been talking about today on what small businesses need to succeed. The supportive training, technical assistance, and lending. It goes to attracting foreign-owned businesses to locate in California, which is, I'm not saying that's bad to do, but you know, the tax incentives or tax exemptions really don't benefit home-based or small businesses. They benefit larger businesses that have more manufacturing, more equipment-based.
Well, you hear about big corporations that are given these sweetheart deals to move onto a piece of land.
Right.
That, you know, they get it for pennies on the dollar or whatever.
And there's no tracking of the job creation from those tax giveaways.
Right.
And those business attraction strategies. Many cities now know that business attraction is not going to pay off for them, but they're still wedded. They're addicted to the business attraction approach, because that's the way they've been trained in economic development or planning school. We're saying shift and look at the talent in your own communities. And a lot of rural areas, for example, Humboldt County has a prosperity network, and it's been 12 years in the making, and they have turned around their economy, depending on fishing and forestry, into grass-fed beef, wineries, construction, healthcare. I mean, they really have turned it around.
Wow.
You can do that. Humboldt Made, made in Humboldt.
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco has a very vital group called SF Made that has been supporting local manufacturing. There is a fantastically exciting trend towards maker spaces and co-working spaces. These are all ways of cultivating local economic development.
And how are you guys related to the maker spaces and the shared workspaces and those kind of things?
Well, that's a good question. I think that our members need to do more, and CAMEO's role is to show them that trend and help push them to provide services to these new entities. In fact, many of the people who are using the maker spaces are the millennials, the Gen Ys, under 35s, and they need business planning assistance. They need financial management information. And they're not all software engineers. Some of them are welders and doing interesting electronics work. Some are artists.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole artisan class of people who are using the maker spaces.
Yeah, working with tools that they didn't have access to.
And they're going to need loans to purchase equipment and to grow. And if they go to a bank looking kind of funky, their welding outfit on, they're not necessarily going to get a loan. No startup or early stage is going to get a loan. And our credit cards are very high interest now. So that's why they may need to go to a local nonprofit lender for help.
And they might be successful at a local nonprofit lender,
if they can show that they can pay the loan back.
Wow.
That's always sort of important.
That's the key to there.
Yeah.
The shared workspaces, people are using them for a number of things, either just as a place to get out of their house if they don't want to be at home, or somebody suggested to me, I'm doing some business over in Walnut Creek, mm-hmm. and there's a space over there, and somebody said, well, you could have you just rent your mm-hmm. thing, you could have an office always over here so you can meet people. It's an interesting option, mm-hmm. rather than either forcing mm-hmm. people to come over here, or,
Well, back in the 90s, I started one of the first business incubators out of the Renaissance Entrepreneurship Center, and it's still going strong today, I'm happy to say, in downtown San Francisco. Oh, wow. And that was the beginning of creating an intentional community of entrepreneurs. And they have little spaces, and then the idea is, and they get a lot of support while they're there, and plus they have each other, mm-hmm. and all that back and forth, cross-fertilization. And the idea is then when you're ready to move out, you move into a larger space. But nowadays people, because of technology, people can stay small, and they like the atmosphere of being with other people too. So the incubation model has morphed into what you might call maker spaces and hubs.
So our guest has been Claudia Viek, the CEO of CAMEO, and I want to thank you for being on the show and for all the good work you're doing for small business.
Thanks, Reese. I feel very privileged to be supporting this field. It's so exciting to see that entrepreneurial potential in our communities and to know that they are contributing to our local economy during a difficult time in our state where we're still emerging from our recession.
But it's very exciting. Good work. Thank you very much.
Thanks.